Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this MASTech special interest group. If you're watching live on YouTube, hopefully everything is coming through right now. There is a little bit of a delay between our recording and when it comes through the YouTube stream. So nobody panic if it feels like things are just a little bit delayed. Joining me today, I've got Chris and Paul, who are here to talk to us all about all of this, because you guys are the experts. I'm just the person who sits here and nods and smiles and goes, yeah, we know what we're doing. Now, this is an interactive event. So if people want to send us a message to ask a question, there's a couple of ways that they can do it. If they're going through to the Industry Innovators community, which is linked across the bottom at the moment, they should be able to see that pop up. They can ask questions directly in the thread, which I'm monitoring right now. Or if they want to ask questions through the YouTube live stream, that pops up here as well, so we can see those. And I'll just interrupt you guys while you're sitting there talking about what you know about and give you the questions that people ask. We've also got Jan, who's sitting in Auckland at the moment with the team there. If they've got any questions, we can pull him through, get them to ask their questions that way. I think that all makes perfect sense. You guys all under control, happy to go, freaking out a little bit at a big live stream with millions of people viewing?
Oh, of course. Thank you for the intro.
There's probably no, as I said, there's no World Cup game on at the moment, so you should be fine. Everybody be watching this instead.
Indeed. Thank you, Paul. I guess I'll just do a bit of an intro for myself just to kick things off. So I'm Chris Ride. I'm a practice director for our platform design services team here at Certus. Worked at Certus for 14 years, I think. It's been quite a bit of a journey. And over that process, I've worked in a range of roles, from application development to doing some cloud infrastructure stuff, and have back in the old days, did a whole bunch of WebSphere and IBM oriented work, and recently taken a bit of an interest in helping the Certus digital team in how we can position Maximo application suite and help our customers on the transition into that product set. So Paul, I'll let you intro yourself.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm Paul Stanford. I'm actually fairly new to Certus. It's probably third month now. I've got a long history in asset management and system implementation, specifically with Maximo. So my interest in this today, I'll be acting a little bit in the interest of the customer and asking a few questions of Chris as he takes us through the journey to MAS. So
this is the perfect way as well of faking like you know what you're talking about the whole time, and you're not really just learning as you go along, like some of us.
Thank you for joining, Paul. It's really great. Both Pauls. It's great to have you both with me on the journey.
All right, ready to get started.
All right, let's do this. We're doing slides?
Yeah.
We could do a slide. Let's get that intro slide up, and we can start talking from there. All right, all good. The point of today is to take you guys out there through some of the options that are available around moving to Maximo Application Suite Manage. We know we have a range of customers running Maximo, and there's a raft of changes coming through, and there's a bit of uncertainty about how you can best position your current environment into Maximo Application Suite. So the point of today is to really run through that, give you an overview of some of the options that are available, some of the technology that's involved in it, and hopefully demystify that a little bit for our audience. So first of all, just wanted to take everyone through a little bit about what's changing in the move to Maximo Application Suite. So just a bit of a comparison between what you have today and where we're headed in terms of Maximo Application Suite. Just for context, the reason that we're here, so IBM's made the announcement that Maximo 7.6.1 is now end of support, is coming in the 30th of September 2025. We're inside 3 years and counting down. And the path has been set out to say that that product entitlement will move you to Maximo Application Suite. So hence the topic of the day. And yeah, we're just trying to help our customers get ahead of that pending date so that we have a plan to remain supported as we progress into that new world. All right, so getting on to the technical side of what is going on here and what this change is. So on the left-hand side, we've got our traditional Maximo 7.6 environment that I think probably most of our audience has got some familiarity with. So broadly, what's happened with Maximo, we have in that blue box across the top, our key area of what Maximo is, and that's a space for managing your assets and delivering functionality in the product. But largely what we have in there is we've got an integration framework, we've got business rules, we've got UI config, we've got automation scripts, and we've got a data model that runs the product. So those are all the sort of assembly components that I came up with that are important and drive how you use your Maximo environment. In the green area, we have all the underlying dependencies. So we've been running on WebSphere application server network deployment, and that's been providing things like queues and LDAP and high availability and clustering, single sign-on to your identity providers and your logging framework. And underneath that, we always needed an operating system to install on, and then every operating system needs somewhere to run. So that would be on a VM or in a cloud environment. And then the other piece of important tech was the database, which we've had options for SQL Server, Oracle, and DB2, and your Maximo data sits in there. So over in the brave new world with Maximo Application Suite, we still have those key components that Maximo's always had around how you manage and maintain and tailor the environment to your specific needs. But it's really those dependencies that's what's changed. So we're introducing the primary piece that's changing is the introduction of Red Hat OpenShift. And that provides the runtime, which really replaces all the high availability and server runtime that we were getting out of WebSphere application server network deployment. Through that move, Red Hat OpenShift takes away the need to BYO operating system. It's coming with its own Red Hat Linux enterprise operating system. And similarly, so it's still a computer, it's still running somewhere, needs to be deployed to a particular runtime environment, be that infrastructure as a service or on-premise or cloud. And to support some of the functionality that was once coming out of the WebSphere component, we now have a new tool called Kafka, which is a message queuing environment, as well as MongoDB, which is supporting a new component called MASCore. The reason we have this MASCore is to support the broader Maximo application suite family. So with this change, IBM's brought a range of products into one suite. Maximo becomes manage, but we also have health, predict, monitor, and visual insights that can all run on this same OpenShift foundation and be integrated to provide one experience for the user.
So Chris, quick question from me. With OpenShift, so what's the real benefit of moving to this OpenShift model for the customer, I guess?
Yeah, sure. I mean, WebSphere application server network deployment, it's in my past and my history, but it's old tech. Like it's tech that was put together before cloud was even a thing, really. I would say it would predate AWS even existing as an idea. So it was put together back when everyone had servers and they put them in their data center and they needed a way to provide availability. But I think IBM's announced it'll live on till the end of 2030, but it is technology that's on the way out. And so, Red Hat OpenShift is aiming to be a multi-cloud abstraction layer that gives you benefits that are a more modern approach. It's using under the covers Kubernetes, which has come out of Google, which they've used to engineer their mega, platform for search and everything else they do. So it underpins everything that they do. And Red Hat's come along and made it nice and easy and friendly to run in the environment. It really provides a new abstraction layer to abstract out either your data center or cloud and provide a common runtime and choice for where you're going to run your environment in a modern way that sets you up for, you know, the next 10 or 20 years.
And yeah, that's great. So with OpenShift, that gives you the option. You talk about cloud platforms, Azure and AWS. It gives you the option to choose where you want to deploy.
Yep. So you can be in AWS, Azure, IBM Cloud, or on premise, or you know, you may even have some sort of availability requirement. That means you might want to be in both clouds, and you can run. Provides an abstraction layer from the cloud vendor, so you can really be truly multi-cloud if that's what's needed.
Excellent. Thank you.
Right. So just broadly going over some of the benefits that are coming from MAS. So I mentioned before how it's now a suite. So we've once had just the Maximo asset management component. That is now being framed up as manage. We have those other suite components. Becomes much easier to turn those on once you have that foundation bedded down. You're able to turn on and extend the capability that's offered out of your asset management environment. From patching and fix management, and this really comes from the OpenShift component, your environment is kind of the vision for OpenShift has been to be like your app store. You have lots of apps on your phone, but do you know how they're updated? Well, it just happens. There's a store, it knows there's an update, it knows there's versions, it gets pushed down, you don't even need to think about it. So Red Hat are aiming to do the same thing with software delivery, and Maximo Application Suite takes some of the benefits from that, which is to tether your runtime environment to upstream software delivery. So you're able to do things like see a drop down and see what future versions are available, change the drop down that you'd like to run, and you know you're up and running on a new version, and the environment that's running will just recycle and start up using newer versions. So quite revolutionary compared to the older days of going to websites, downloading software, copying it to the server, and you know having a next process or scripts that you run that deploy it. So it really aims to make that a lot simpler in the future. Another area particularly related to the MAS managed component is around license management. There's a new tooling available in the solution that enables you to chart and visualize how your licenses are deployed, but also to be able to change those in real time. So in the older days, you'd purchase concurrent and authorized users, and that's what you've got. You need to sit within those boundaries and in order to remain compliant. So we now have what's called MAS points, which is a pool of points that can be allocated dynamically. So as long as you stay under the threshold for that, you're able to change whether you want authorized or concurrent users and actually manage and monitor that in real time. So you can see what your allocation is. Every authorized user you have kind of moves the low watermark. And then you've got your concurrent pool that changes as users log in and log out. So yeah, really changes the approach for managing the licenses you have in the environment. There is a bit of a tweak to licensing. So some of the components in Manage, like Health and Scheduler, the model for those changes, it does come a little bit easier to grow your capability and take advantage of some of those extended feature sets. The Maximo mobile component has been completely re-engineered from the older Anywhere style solution. So it is a modern based experience these days. The general Manage UI has been modernized as well. So we've got a few new UI elements and features in there that are looking a bit more 2022. And then, that underlying piece of having a OpenShift foundation, which just sets you up for being cloud friendly and cloud ready.
So Chris, with mobility, there's a number of third-party mobile products that integrate with Maximo. So does this impact on clients being able to choose their mobile solution to connect into MAS? Yeah,
so there's lots of change associated with MAS. I mentioned, all the fundamentals are changing. There's still quite a lot that stays the same. So the APIs that were available in previous versions continue to be available. There are some tweaks to that we'll talk through a little bit later. But for example, our Touchstone solution we have at Certus that we're really proud of, that is really new to market. So that still continues to be available and supported into the MAS environment, because we're really just taking advantage of the APIs that sit in the Maximo product.
Okay, excellent.
So just going to take you through now some of the hosting options that exist for MAS. So just go through this one. There's a bit of detail on here, but there's really two broad families for how you can look at hosting. So there's, and in both scenarios, there's a role for a business partner like Certus to play supporting your application like we do for many of our customers today. So the first one is really to go down a kind of customer managed path. So this approach, you're going to take the components that are available as part of the Maximo application suite product and assemble those into your own infrastructure. That infrastructure could be one of two ways. It could be you pick on-premise, so you've got VMware or physical servers you want to choose, or you could pick a hyperscaler-based deployment. So that could be AWS or Azure or IBM Cloud potentially. And yeah, with all of these options, you're basically taking and assembling the solution like you have today with WebSphere and your database server, and you're assembling those and then completing an install and then wrapping the resultant solution with the support that you offer. And particularly in the hyperscaler, I'll touch on this a little bit later, there's accelerators provided from IBM around AWS and Azure that do make that deployment pretty straightforward. But in that scenario, you're still on the hook for support of that solution post the install process, so upgrade cycles, management, any troubleshooting that needs to happen, backup, restore, all those operational concerns that can be a little bit masked by an install process. But in the end, you're going to be on the hook for having to perform those tasks. And then the second family is really around looking at taking that as a service or a hosted solution. So Certus is working in partnership with IBM and has a role to play in both of these. So the first family is around a SaaS-oriented solution. So this is the newest option that's available. And that aims, it's running on AWS. It's aiming to take a lot of the human-oriented operations out of the solution by being quite prescriptive about that particular solution, trying to make customers as like as possible so that costs for operations can be driven out, and obviously that then gets passed on to the customer base. And then there's the dedicated or managed service offering. So in this family, we've got a hosted scenario similar to the SaaS solution, but with a lot more flexibility for customer needs and requirements. And there's an array of additional features that are available in that dedicated world that go above and beyond what's available in the base solution.
Chris, with the sort of on-premise version, why would a customer want to take all of this in-house? I mean, a lot of the historically it's been in-house and it's moved to the cloud. Why would they want to bring it back onto premise?
Yeah, I mean, there could be some sort of regulatory requirement that says you need to know where your servers are. I don't know, there's too many people with poor network connectivity, but that could be an option. You may have some sort of need to run this in an isolated environment. Probably largely regulatory, I would imagine. Obviously, most people are trying to get rid of data centers these days. So I think the likely place for this solution is really to be in cloud, whether that's your own cloud where you control it and run it yourself, or taking that as a service model.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess there's a whole lot of complexity you take on board when you choose to run it on premise versus the other options, going towards a SaaS where that gets outsourced. So
yeah, absolutely. And even in the hyperscaler area, like we can see the PaaS orientated versions of OpenShift that are available in that space. And I think that kind of represents a way to offload some of the underlying complexity and the operational risk to the cloud vendor instead of taking that all on yourself.
Okay, great, thank you.
So just another picture in relation to those hosting options. So just covering a little bit about how the MAS license, the traditional Maximo license that our customers have got deployed. So in the software installation component, you can take a bare metal approach, VMware or hyperscaler. You need to set up OpenShift and then support it. But then the actual OpenShift license is coming with Maximo Application Suite. Similarly in IBM Cloud, you can actually take the IBM ROCs service, so the IBM PaaS solution for OpenShift, actually take the license that comes with Maximo Application Suite into that environment. So it represents a way to actually get OpenShift as a service, but without having to go through some of the complexity or some of the cost of paying for OpenShift again. In the OpenShift as a service area, so if you were to take Arrow from Azure or Rosa from AWS, you're actually going to have to pay, you're going to pay again for your OpenShift entitlement, but obviously you're going to get some benefits of reduced complexity. And then over on the right-hand side, one of the two managed service offerings. So if you take the dedicated component, you have a hosting cost for that, but you take your software licenses to it, versus the SaaS option where it's actually, you would need to effectively relicense what you have and you buy just that SaaS offering, which actually includes your user license for Maximo Manage.
So Chris, with the SaaS option, does that mean you effectively the licenses you might have already, they get left behind and you just move forward with a subscription?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you would need to effectively relicense. As you'll see a little bit later on, SaaS is really framed at the low complexity environments. So in the scenario where it's applicable, you probably have a lower threshold or lower number of licenses that move into that model. Whilst you would be giving something away, it may not have the impact of some of our larger clients.
Okay, thanks.
So just going to give you a little bit of a run through now of how SaaS and dedicated are different. So the general piece here is SaaS is really focused on that low complexity scenario, and the dedicated really focuses on having a customer environment that you can tailor and to meet your specific needs. And the next slide will just show a little bit more of the detail around this. So we run down the table here. So the key feature at the top, so with SaaS, the software license is included, whereas with dedicated, you actually need to bring your own Maximo licenses to that environment. In both environments, the infrastructure is included. With dedicated, there is choice for cloud provider coming. So we have an option for both IBM Cloud as well as AWS. There's custom scripting, so that relates to automation scripts. So you're still able to, create your customizations in the Maximo product. There's the ability to VPN into your customer environment. So we know Maximo is heavily integrated with other systems. So having that level of VPN connectivity is still required. There's ISO compliance. There's non-prod environments. There's a self-service portal to support some of the operational components. Big differences start here where my red box is misaligned, which is around the upgrade scenarios. So with SaaS, there's one schedule. You get the upgrades when they come. There's no choice about deferring those. With dedicated, you're going to get notification, hey, there's a patch coming. It goes in your non-prod environment 1 week with a target for production the following week. If you've got something critical going on in your environment on that cutover weekend, say you had a GIS upgrade going and didn't want to change 2 things at once, you have the option to defer that for a window of time. Not forever, but for a window of time to just minimize the impacts of those updates. We have Java code. So this is a big difference between SaaS and dedicated. So there is no option nor plans for Java to be supported on SaaS. And we know that that's going to be a big deciding factor for a lot of customers that are looking to migrate. That is an option on dedicated. Note the star, the yes relates here to the to-be state. That is coming soon. It's within the time frame of anyone who's going to pick this up in the coming period. But yeah, we know that that's a really strong feature that our customer base is going to be really keen to take advantage of. Choice of database, currently DB2, Oracle coming, SQL Server may come, but is not on the hard roadmap at this point in time. Custom security configuration, so it relates to like tying into your security environment, so getting login alerts to know and understand who is logging into your environment. So for those security conscious customers out there, that could be quite an important feature. Network connection options, so things like having connection only from head office, for example, direct link or whitelisting certain IP ranges, for examples. So that's something you can get out of dedicated, whereas SaaS is just an over the internet type solution. There's some options around logical and physical isolation of data in dedicated. SLAs are similar, and there's some point in time options that are available in dedicated that you don't get in SaaS. And then the last piece is really the OPEX, CAPEX scenario. So CAPEX for your software licenses for dedicated, but then operating expense generally for the cloud runtime.
Chris, with data isolation, so with a SaaS model, are you able to choose the residency of that data, like where it will reside, either onshore or otherwise?
Yeah, no, in SaaS, you do have choice of location that it's deployed. So it's all based on AWS. So there is choice. So for example, customers in Australia would be able to choose to have your environment running in the Sydney data center of AWS.
Great. So that's important to a lot of people these days.
Yeah, critically important. And yeah, so both of these are available in Australia. But yeah, otherwise it's probably not viable, really. So just a little bit more about the SaaS solutions. So generally the positioning here is it's suitable for your low complexity, non-customized environment. It's running on AWS through Red Hat OpenShift on AWS, which is ROSA, the PaaS variant of that. All the hosting's taken care of, so installation, configuration, upgrades, operations, database, network. It's pure as a service, so you get a URL and you interact with that. You don't have to worry about patches or upgrades ever again, which is obviously going to be music to some customers' ears. The intent here is it aims to make customer environments as similar as possible, taking out the operating costs, which then passed on to the buyer. However, in doing so, it does lack customization options, and that does make it a bit of an unlikely migration target for customers that have been running Maximo for a long period of time. So on the other hand, the MAS dedicated solutions. So this is the more flexible of the two. So typically with dedicated, and as is with SaaS, you're going to get a prod and a non-prod environment. So you've still got functionality living in your application that requires testing. You're going to need to stage things through environments. So those sorts of things that you're used to would live on. You will have that prod and non-prod and a dedicated cluster for each of them. The sizing is based on t-shirt sizes, so based on number of users. So gates at 50, 100, 250, and I think above 500 users, so that's concurrent users in the environment. So the hosting provider does look after the foundation components. So they're looking after the cloud infrastructure all the way up to the application. Just one distinction here, and this is really where Certus can come and help you, which is around the application support. So the hosting kind of gets you to the applications installed. You then have what's inside your application. So the operations team from IBM is only going to look after the fact you have an environment and it's up, and they're on the hook for that to give you the availability you'd expect. In terms of I have an application and it's functional and it works for my needs and my automation scripts behave as I expect that they would, that's still a role that needs to be fulfilled by customer only or customer and partner like Certus. There's a couple of points that are scheduled to change. So it's just in italic at the bottom. So currently over HTTPS, so that is changing soon, so that you have some additional flexibility and options in that space. And also that it is just a DB2 oriented solution for your database, with Oracle coming and SQL Server, not so sure that it's coming, but
So Chris, what are the implications there if you have SQL Server and you want to move to MAS? What's a pathway there?
Yeah, so to get onto dedicated, there would need to be a translation going on. So there are services available to support that transition. And, once you land in there, you would be on DB2. But I guess the good thing is your DB2 environment would be fully managed by the service. So you would be escaped from having to, have a DB2 DBA to look after your data. We know that there's very common use cases where customers have their data warehouse that's populated out of Maximo. It's a very common pattern. So this environment provides access to a reporting database. That database would be DB2, but most of the ETL tools, it will support a DB2 based database connection. So once you pull the data out, you can place it into your data warehouse, which would be, choice of your own database anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess seeing it's cloud-based, you're really removing the need for a DBA and have that those in-house skills. So the choice of database is probably less important.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not what they're used to, but yeah, as you say, you don't have to support it anymore. So you can sleep easy knowing that the ops are paid for anyway. Yeah. Just skim over this one fairly quickly, but the intent here is, when you procure a dedicated environment, you're going to get a cluster based on AWS or IBM cloud. So that cluster being a Red Hat OpenShift cluster, and that runs your MAS components. And then there's some prerequisites and other components that run out of cloud storage or things like Kafka and Mongo. You're kind of running as a shard or partition of those common services. But you get in a dedicated environment for your compute and your database, so you're very independent in terms of other customer workload. Just running through the benefits around moving to dedicated. So obviously one of the key things is to avoid the requirement to host and support the new technology that's coming with MAS. All your operational concerns have been taken care of. So obviously operations of any environment is a key factor at a key cost in terms of how you of running those over time. The ability to turn on other features. So there's a real journey with MAS around how you can mature what you're running in your environment. So most customers start with the manage or Maximo component, which is looking after your assets, but there's options for getting your IoT data in there, using that data for health insights and predict. And those are features that can be easily turned on and integrated in the product, as opposed to if you did embark upon a on-premise journey or a journey yourself. If you wanted to turn on a new feature, obviously you're going to need to throw more services at that, and put all the operations around them. In terms of dedicated as well, we've got flexibility for specific customer requirements. So that just obviously is a real differentiator to the SaaS offering from previously. And then lastly, with partnership with Certus. So yeah, the hosting solution's getting you to It's Up. Certus is here to help you with It's Up, and it works and it behaves how you expect it would in that browser environment. The customization configuration that you need to run your business is as it should be.
So, Chris, with the SaaS option, you mentioned earlier that it doesn't support the Java customizations. So, if you've got a quite heavily customized version at the moment, what's the pathway to move to a SaaS, and is that actually a viable option?
Yeah, I mean, you could, should you be able to, transition everything over to automation scripts. I think that's a path most customers have identified they need to go on anyway. But, as we know, we've got people have been running Maximo for 20 years. They've got Java customizations that, are many years old that may or may not be needed for today's operations. But often the easiest path for those is to just keep them in place. They're supporting things like integration and complexity like that. So yeah, for those customers, it's probably unlikely that SaaS is going to be a viable solution. There may be a very large decustomization effort. It might be that dedicated is a better path. And I think you'd probably need to be or at a low user count, low complexity in order for SaaS to be appropriate.
Okay.
So I'll go through just a little bit now around the customer managed environments. So this collection of slides really focuses in on what you would expect you'd need to do around deploying to your own environment. So again, sliced out from the slide from previously, in this path, you're going to take the Maximo application suite product and you're going to find an OpenShift environment to deploy that to. So that could be bare metal, VMware, one of the hyperscalers, IBM Cloud, or OpenShift as a service. So depending on which path you choose to take. But yeah, the point being, if you can get it onto OpenShift, you should be able to get Maximo up and running in that environment. So one of the questions we've had in relation to this is, how is it supported? If I take these components, do I have access to support? So obviously the Maximo application suite product comes with the support that you would normally expect from IBM, so the typical PMR process. But that actually extends through to DB2 and into the OpenShift environment. So if you take the software download approach and you wish to install it on premise in your environment, and you have an issue with OpenShift, you're able to raise a PMR through IBM based on a defect that you found in the OpenShift product. So really,
Chris, can I just interrupt you for half a second there? Sorry. I've had a question come through from Duncan Palmer. He says here, the SaaS option mentioned no support for customer unique third-party integrations. Does that mean the SaaS package only supports integrations which are provided by MAS?
Yeah, so you've still, great question. Thank you, Duncan, out there. So yeah, it's you're still able to use what's available in the Maximo integration framework. So if you can configure it in the UI as the general theme, then you would be okay on SaaS. So anything you can get to through the Maximo UI, but yeah, if you're going above and beyond that for some sort of extended integration type, yeah, you wouldn't be able to support that based on SaaS.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions sitting there, Paul?
No. I'll interrupt you when they come in just to make sure you're still awake.
All right. Well, yeah. If there's anyone out there listening that has a question, please, feel free to pop it in the comments.
All right, back to it.
All right. So coming back, I'll just get my flow going again. So yeah.
Sorry.
So in terms of that, that's okay. That's okay. So in terms of the support, so depending on the flavor of OpenShift you pick, so if you were to pick OpenShift PaaS, then you're going to have support from the vendor that you chose that from. So we see that as a real advantage in that area, because you've got support from potentially your cloud infrastructure and then into the OpenShift platform. So that's going to make operations of the environment a lot simpler. And we know, we know SQL Server is loved by many. But yeah, if you were deploying that, you would obviously you'd be running a version of that which would come with Microsoft support. Yeah, there's a couple of components in the guts of MAS, such as MongoDB and Strizme, which are open source. So the technicalities of the supporting those is maybe a little bit of a gray area, because they are an open source product. Obviously, if it relates to how Maximo connects into them, those sorts of things are going to be covered. But really, they're a bit of a highlight there as a call out that there's customer data that's residing in both of those components. So how you support and manage those is an area that we'd need to really be considering as part of deployment into your own environment. So this is just a little tease around OpenShift, and if you were to run in an on-premise environment, what you could be in for in terms of setup of a OpenShift environment. So OpenShift works in threes. So you have control plane nodes, which are like a family of 3 servers that run the configuration element of your environment. You have compute nodes that, again, tend to run in threes to give you the uptime that you're after. And there's infrastructure nodes and storage nodes, which again run in threes, to infrastructure nodes, which are supporting things like the operations and reporting of OpenShift itself, the logging and monitoring frameworks, and the storage nodes, which provide an abstraction layer for data that's running in an on-premise environment. So I guess one of the call outs here was not to go through all the various options that are available for OpenShift on-premise, but rather was just to highlight that if you're taking a path to say we're going to deploy on-premise, that it is a multi-server setup. There's a number of services associated with it. And one of the other caveats just to highlight with this, I mean, it's called out in these reference architectures as a limited SLA. That would be because you would deploy all of these components into a single data center. There is a requirement with OpenShift of low network latency between nodes. So stretching these out over multiple data centers is generally not recommended. The only caveat for that is if you take this architecture to one of the hyperscaler environments where network connectivity has been thoroughly planned and rigorously supported with very good availability between zone, that you could take this and stripe this across multiple availability zones so that you do get improved availability if you just take this and place this into one of the hyperscalers.
So, Chris, when you're talking about availability zones, is that mainly the application itself versus the data? Does that how does that work from a database perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. I guess when I was talking there, really talking through the application side. So what would be your application servers? There's no silver bullet with relational databases in terms of HA. Typically, I think all of them work on a similar architecture, which is active, passive, and witness, which is, so I've got a main node and I'm shipping my logs to a secondary node, and then something that can trigger a takeover if the primary is detected to be down. Obviously, even with this, so this is just teasing the first bit of how OpenShift might work, but you need to apply the Maximo product to this and then consider your database implications of it. We know even, that scenario there with active, passive database environments, those don't necessarily work with very, very low cutover requirements when you stretch those out across multiple zones. So Maximo application suite managed is still, it's still, as it is today, very much a database driven application.
Yep. Great, thanks.
Again, just going a little bit over the operators. So operators are a new bit of tech that comes with OpenShift that aim to automate the what an operator or a human would do to manage and detect the health of a particular environment. So the big red box, Maximo Application Suite Manage, it comes as an operator itself. So the operator automates both the deployment of the software, inject some configuration, and then how it needs to be distributed over your OpenShift environment. But it itself has these dependencies on these black ones listed here around Mongo and Certification Manager, Behavioral Analytics Services, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just really to highlight here, you get your OpenShift platform set up, and then you've got this family of dependencies that sit under it that are new. They're new components that relate to this particular environment. And yes, it's all part of the process of doing the deployment, would be establishing the process for those. However, there are ways to automate this, and that's where I'm going to get to here in relation to the scripts that have come from IBM. So IBM's put significant investment in the hyperscaler area of the customer managed piece, and that relates to how you deploy to both AWS and Azure at this point in time. So this section here, I'm just going to take you through how this operates with AWS. There's an equivalent process that exists for Azure as well. So effectively what you do, you go on, and you'll see the link at the bottom of the page here. It is an AWS Marketplace link. So you go to this Marketplace URL. I'm sure we'll make these slides available. Click on that link. Effectively, what happens from there is you've got a number of steps you need to go to, one being tapping into the Red Hat cloud to provide your Red Hat licensing, providing your IBM license into an S3 bucket, and then you effectively fill out a form which tells the installer where those components are, fill in what size of instance you would like deployed and where you would like it deployed. Click the next button. A VM is deployed into the cloud environment, and it'll provision out your OpenShift environment. And as OpenShift environment with MAS deployed to it, I should say. And as a result of that, you end up with an environment that looks something like this, which is a HA environment having worker nodes and control nodes in 3 availability zones, all the network components, storage components that are actually going to support you in having that environment available for your users. So it gets you to the installed stage. You're up, you're running. Obviously, then you've got to configure that application for your needs. And beyond that, in terms of how you run and operate and manage and back up, all those things that you would need to do for a production system, you would need to understand what steps are required there to get those necessary operational procedures stood up for your environment.
Well, you've got a pause there to catch your breath. Nick's actually asked a question wanting to know, what does high availability mean on the summary page for both SAS and IBM Dedicated? Is this having a replica DB or something more?
Yeah, so good question. Thank you. High availability there really means you've got a OpenShift environment that's highly available, but also some database replication that sits underneath it. So yeah, the environment there has been architected for availability. I think it is a 1.9 availability, but so 99.9% availability. But yes, obviously there's lots of tech spec details associated with that. It's architected for availability in a region. It's not a multi-region solution, but I think the availability there should be acceptable for your customer base, or at least similar to what you could get today with the Maximo 7.6 environment.
Cool. Thank you. Let you get back to your flow again.
No, good timing. Good timing. Thank you. Paul Stanford, any more questions or any questions around this area?
I was just thinking, if you did want higher availability, like, you get a 5 nines or something like that, would you have to move onto, say, AWS architecture where you're across availability zones? Or I'm just saying, if you do have those requirements, does it preclude the SaaS and the dedicated option?
It's an interesting question. If you wanted to go above and beyond, you probably need to take a good hard look at your database availability, because I think OpenShift in some regards and application availability is kind of easy, because you can always add another bit of compute and another thing. The hardest part to do for availability is always your data, particularly where you've got a relational database that's underpinning the solution, which has a single instance requirement. Achieving availability beyond what's happened or what's been provided from IBM may be difficult. I think you could have failover clusters and failover databases there in another region. So absolutely, you could go above and beyond. You're probably just going to run into some pretty hefty setup or ongoing costs to manage an environment that looks like that. Definitely can be done. I guess it's just a matter of assessing what your needs are and how far you're willing to push it.
Yeah, I guess what you're showing here on this slide is the application, not the data. That's right? So even with AWS, they're not talking about the data side of availability zones and that type of thing. It's just
this deployment is going to place a DB2 warehouse instance into your OpenShift cluster. So your database is running in your OpenShift environment as well. So again, it's kind of making your database operate a little bit, it runs in a container. It's a bit like the application tier, but there's still no magic to that. Relational databases, by their design, there's a transaction log that needs to be in one spot. So you can't really get around that, although there are some left field future state relational databases that are trying to get around it, but none of which are supported by this product family.
Cool. Now that he's finished, I'm going to ask another question on behalf of Nick. With IBM dedicated, who can make application changes? For example, add new fields, change screen layout. Is that just IBM, or could Certus or a customer do that?
Great question. Thank you, Nick. And so the answer to that is IBM, the operations team, would not be able to do that. So they actually don't have the admin rights to your application. So Certus or you as the customer would be able to execute that. There's a notes around this, and even if the application update process for dedicated requires human intervention in the UI, those steps actually need to be performed by the customer. So they've put a real line in the sand. The separation exists at the application is up. What goes on the inside, you are responsible for that, or you can partner with Certus and we can support you in making sure that you have the technical support for that application layer.
Cool. Thank you.
Great question though, Nick. Thank you. So just a few considerations in terms of how you might approach a self-managed deployment. So I believe leveraging PaaS OpenShift is going to be a bit of a game changer in terms of reduction in complexity. So that's definitely a path that you want to investigate. There is very, very recently Maximo Application Suite 8.9 available. The information, I know it's in the current time frame for that support to be available. I haven't actually been able to pinpoint a firm statement on that one, but we know that that's coming and it's coming soon. So that's certainly an area that needs to be looked at. I've probably said it too many times already, but looking at day two operations, so backup and recovery. So this is a new environment, lots of components, interconnectivity, making sure that that's really considered as part of the approach. And then, yeah, lastly, kind of tease this out a little bit before, but cloud hosting is probably going to be give you better availability than anything you can do on premise. And it's probably your likely migration target even if you're taking this on yourself, that you're going to want to look at a cloud-based hosted solution. Just in terms of broader considerations in moving to MAS, so these are generic to regardless of which solution you take on. So RMI, I know that's surfaced in some customer environments. It's actually gone away in MAS, so the advice is to use modern techniques like APIs. Cognos and BERT is an area to look at. There's definitely strategic moves towards Cognos. BERT continues to be supported, so it's just a flag to consider. BERT will go away one day, so if you've got considerations, I don't have too many reports, maybe I'm looking at a different reporting solution, maybe that's an opportunity to look at and something to look at pre-migration to reduce what you need to do after you cut over. The messaging source, so there's JMS support available in the product, so you can push out to MQ if that's what you have in your environment external to MAS, but Kafka seems to be the place for all the future strategy and opens up some opportunities for some new ways of integrating into the environment. Basic authentication has gone away. There's probably in every environment, there's some basic auth, I would suggest, doing API integration. So that needs to move towards Maximo API keys. And yeah, that's available in 7.6. So that's something that customers can get ahead of now, looking at what type of integration you're using for API authentication. And file-based integration. So I know it can be common to drop a file on file system and have some sort of process come in and gobble that up and send the data into the solution. So yeah, getting access to file system in MAS is not something that is really appropriate or relevant for OpenShift. There is capability to reach out to cloud object storage. So your files and needs for attachments can live on, but the process to get in there is different. So it is just a consideration if there's any file integration going on that might need a different look. And then lastly on this, just in terms of interface tables, depending on the solution you've selected, and obviously the database is moving as part of whatever you do here. So it's an area that needs some attention. So and it's interesting. There's quite a flavor to this in terms of you need to think of your integrations really.
I'm going to interrupt you again with another couple of questions, this time from Duncan again. What is the primary use case of the Kafka queues introduced, i.e. data ingest into the platform, streaming of data out, or just queuing capability internally into the platform? And he'd also like to know whether or not there's been any documentation on on integration. It says here there was mention of integration. Is there any documentation on that now?
Yeah, sure. So just on the first question around Kafka, so you currently have sequential in, sequential out, continuous in, continuous out, that Paul will know more about than I do. Those currently are wired in to use, typically using the WebSphere message queuing, but can use, so those are replaced by Kafka that actually drives that queuing mechanism. But there is a Kafka connector, and that's in 7.6.1.2 as well. So you have a means to integrate out to Kafka as well. So what that means is you can, say you have a work order change event or asset change event, you want to push that work order or asset data out to an external system. You can push that from the Maximo product into Kafka and then have something else come along and consume that data. So look, it's this is a real capability that's really welcome to the product. Gives you new options for integration, and Kafka's sort of everywhere these days. It's a pretty common solution for integration. So yeah, if you've got a modern consumer, it's definitely something to look at. On the second question, in terms of integrations, I haven't seen a Bible or anything. There's obviously the standard IBM documentation. I'm not sure that I can think of a specific document for that. Again, just in the general theme of this, there hasn't been a lot that's been taken away with this move. It's really the way Maximo's wrapped. So the call out on RMI and basic auth, they're things that have been removed. But yeah, for the most part, the solution kind of lives on. And if you can do it today, as long as it's doing it in an okay way, you should be good in the new world as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Anything else to add to that, Paul?
No, not really. Chris, you're doing a great job.
All right, and this actually is almost my last slide. So cue your questions, guys. If you do have any, please get them ready. So yeah, we are coming towards the end here. So just a few notes just in terms of preparing for change. So obviously September 30th, I think 2025, you need to get ahead of that date. It's going to take some time to plan what you're going to do, and it's going to take some time to do it. We've got less than 3 years. We think maybe 2025 could be busy in this space as well. So yeah, getting ahead of where you think you're going to want to go is a really important thing to do. Getting to 7612, thank you, Paul, for highlighting this one yesterday. It is something that you need to do to migrate. So don't let your systems degrade. Don't sit on 7611. It's, you know, obviously, as you'd always say, keep your systems current is always a good idea. But if you need a reason to drive getting to 7612, this is something you have to do in the lead up anyway. So you know, get to at least 7612. You can get to 7613 these days as well. So, but yeah, don't get too far behind. And if you do happen to be on 760, yeah, I guess the reality is don't think you can skip 761. You're going to have to go via that version. So, yeah, time to start thinking about that. Tech debt, look, any move, this is a large foundational platform change. If you have tech debt in your environment that you can remove, the less complex your environment is, the easier it will be to shift across to the new environment. So, you know, if you know it's there, if you can decustomize, get rid of things that don't work well, it's going to smooth out your journey for migration. Start migrating Java customization to automation scripts. We know there's lots of Java out there in Maximo world. You don't have to do this for the dedicated environment or self-managed environments. However, the model's changing, the pushes to automation scripts, the experience is going to be better on automation scripts. We would suggest that if you're going to touch it now, you should probably migrate it. So start your program of getting off Java and get towards automation scripts. Get your financial planning in place. We know that these things run out over a few years. There's going to be a change. We've got OPEX and CAPEX changes. You're likely to be moving from on-premise to cloud-based hosting in one way or another. So yeah, start thinking about what that change might mean and what your planning periods look like so you can get ahead of those. Be on the lookout for any major connected systems that might have similar programs running in a similar time frame. I think every customer has finance and GIS-based integration tapped into Maximo. If you've got something going on with either of those systems in 2025, then yeah, you might want to, you know, think about pushing for a 2024 date. But yeah, just be on the lookout for that. And then yeah, lastly, talk to Certus about how we can help build out a plan. We've been working through this, doing assessments around what the roadmap looks like. So yeah, please reach out to us, and we're happy to help build out a plan that's going to get you ahead of these dates and help select an environment that's going to work best for you.
Now, do you want to take,
last slide. It's questions time. So, are there
do
any
you
sitting there?
need a glass of water after all of that?
Too much talking.
So, Chris, something we thinking about yesterday. This is a big shift for all the customers out there on Maximo, and I guess the capacity to bring everyone along at the last minute is going to be in question. So, I guess to your point about moving early, it's probably in your customers' interest to start thinking about this sooner rather than later, because inevitably there'll be those that do wait till the end, and you don't want to be caught up in having to queue in line to get this done. So it sounds like getting in early is advisable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to. There are always, I suppose, there are extended support options, but they do cost money. So just focus on getting across, look through those benefits, see what other value you can get out of the suite broadly. And there's opportunities to make your operations simpler through this move and picking a different arrangement for hosting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So if anybody else has any more questions, and I should point out our audience is halved because it's lunchtime where you are now. So everyone's rushed off to get something to eat. If there's any questions, though, people can leave them in the comments section on the YouTube feed or in the page at the moment up on the platform that we use to share all this information. I've got Jan sitting in the Auckland office at the moment. Has he got any questions for us? Is he still awake there? Let me add him to I'll add him to the stream very quickly. So, how's Auckland going?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, we've certainly got some challenges on the weather perspective, but it's all good. I think I just want to thank Chris for sharing this and very, very valuable information. Certainly from a commercial perspective in Australia and as well as in New Zealand, we tend to bump into these questions on a daily basis from our clients. Tell us about MAS and tell us about the road to MAS, getting the numbers on the board, etc. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with a number of our partners throughout Australia and New Zealand. So, Chris, thank you very much. And Paul, to you as well. I think there's some very good questions that you posed to the team. So, yep, it's fantastic. Good stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jan. I'll pop him out again. You can still see everything that's going on in the background. I don't think you're going to be inundated with questions. Like I said, it's lunchtime. People are hungry. But what we'll do is we'll make sure that there are still comments open that people can comment on the video when it goes live on YouTube. And they'll still be able to comment, obviously, on the threads and stuff like that. So there's plenty of places for people to get that information. And we can look at planning for the next one of these where we answer some of those questions beforehand, or so that you can sort of incorporate that into the presentation that you're doing. How are you holding up after that? Because that was an epic hour-long
good.
essentially.
Very impressive. Lots of talking. Thank you. Hopefully everyone out there has got something out of it. And obviously we're keen to help our customers in navigating this. So it's certainly an area we're passionate about. So these things can be a little daunting sometimes, but always good fun when you're talking about something you know about. So it's been good.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to sign off here. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons. And as I said before, if anyone's got any questions or anything like that, leave them in the comments section. We'll make sure that they get answered next time around.
Cool.
Have a great day.
Well, hey, one last thing, because we're on YouTube, shouldn't we tell everyone to like and subscribe?
Well, you can if you want. Yeah. I mean, it's an unlisted live stream, but sure, like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Let's do it.
Like and subscribe. Or just go to the platform that we have that you can download from the App Store, your App Store, whichever one you've got, specifically for the Innovators community.
Great.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.